Hello, Comp 1. I greet you on an absolutely beautiful October 31st, another Halloween. Sun is shining, and I couldn't be happier to be talking about the subject that I want to talk to you about today. I'm dropping again the name of Richard Lanham, the late Professor Richard Lanham, who taught among other places at the University of Chicago. And this little video is going to serve as a kind of introduction to what I hope you queue up on D2L and experience this week. First, a little background on Lanham. Richard Lanham, whose books I've been reading since the 80s, is famous for a couple of things. He's famous for a book called Revising Prose, and before that, around 1973 or so, he wrote a book called Style, an anti-textbook. It's Richard Lanham who taught me that English classes should not have style as just a little chapter or a component in a writing class. In his mind, style should be the object, the end of an English class. He argues that prose style, studying it, wondering about it, thinking about it, is something that should be, a student of writing should just be ever mindful of, hyper mindful of, so to speak. Now, Lanham teaches me to tell you that style is not something that the world is necessarily going to reward you for. As I think I've said elsewhere in these videos, you know, we go to workplaces, for instance, where style may not be rewarded. We've talked about this before. Police officers have to write like police officers. People who are nurses in hospitals and doctors, they have to write and record a particular kind of way, right? And I hope I haven't told the story already. I'm thinking of a family called the Millers. I taught all those Miller girls, 3 in a row, first Rachel, then Catherine, and then Hannah. And that household, about 15 miles south of here, where I live, produced 3 of the most gorgeous and flamboyant writers I've ever seen in all my days. I remember Catherine Miller went out to Lewis and Clark a few years ago, and she called me on the telephone the first fall that she was there. She was tearful. She got back a sociology paper that had a C on it. She had never witnessed a grade like that in all her days. Well, I consoled her and I said, okay, you're forgetting. Remember, you're at university now. You're taking a sociology class, and that sociologist wants you to write like a sociologist. Do this. Take that paper to the campus writing lab and help them, vamp it up so that professor's happy. Well, she called me the next day. She went to the writing lab with the paper that had a C on it. She was met by a woman who had worked at that writing lab for years, you know, the big beehive hairdo and pencil sticking out of it like antenna. And the woman, the director of the writing lab, not only helped her spiff that paper up so it would make the sociology professor happy, you know what, she hired her on the spot and gave her a job. She walked in there with what was a C paper for that professor and walked out with a job as one of the center's tutors. Lanham reminds me to tell you that, you know, the workplace is not going to reward it. The world of school is not necessarily going to reward it. Who cares? It's the funnest thing to think about in an English class as I'm concerned. Where I can and could take over Central Lakes College, here's what I would do. I would make sure that when you walk through that building, down its corridors, the east, center, western part of the building, in every single room, students would be studying different prose style, right? Different centuries. 18th century in this room, Tudor England in this room, classical period in this room, the Beat Generation prose stylists of the 50s. That's what I would do. The whole college, everyone there, all 6,000 students would study prose style, nothing but. Even over at Staples, at the technical campus, all those guys would just get off their Bobcats, turn them off, and come in and start wondering about prose style. Am I taking it too far? I don't think so. Now, here's what I got to get you a little bit ready for. I'm holding, and I'll hold it up here as an audiovisual aid, a copy of a little film that Richard Lanham made in the early 80s. In fact, he made it in 1983. It's called Revising Prose. It is the companion video that goes with his genius book, which is about making you a better writer. And I went and got this the other day in the library of my old life, right through the peat bog there, over at St. John's University. I went over, checked out this video, and I took it up to Central Lakes College and showed it to my 2 face-to-face comp ones. And they found it painful but helpful at the same time. So then the question on my mind the last few days is, how am I going to get this gear to my fully online comp class, section 74? And I've been talking back and forth with our IT dean about it. And the important thing is not to break copyright laws, right? Well, luckily, and you're going to be really excited about this, it is up on YouTube. I shared this video, kind of the way English majors share things back and forth, with my colleague, my new friend, Dr. Brandy Hoffman, who's a new English teacher at Central Lakes College. She took this home last weekend, watched it, found it helpful, and she discovered that there's a professor out there that paid for the copyright laws from Richard Lanham's wife. I mean, you don't need to know all this stuff, but he called her up and gave her $50 or whatever, and it is now up on YouTube for everyone to enjoy and appreciate in 3 installments. I'm going to post these links to these vids just the way I post everything in D2L, but you deserve a little preparation for this video. Let's start about the negative aspects. This video was made in 1983 with something you're going to hear Lanham describe as TV graphics, okay? Now, it's a little bit rough in that regard. 1983 probably saw the advent of the Apple II GS, maybe the first computer that we ever had with color, and we've got a little bit of attention here regarding form and content. The form of this, I'm just going to say it. It's horrible, okay? If you're a gamer, welcome to hell. It's going to be rough. So not only is it visually not very appealing, but we also have enlisted here an ancient Farfisa synthesizer. So you're going to have to get used to these sounds for 28 minutes. Like, and it's just sort of it's the decision that he made, okay? So just deal with it. So in addition to the Farfisa organ, or synthesizer rather, and these TV graphics, which are you're going to mock them in your spare time, we have some content here that is absolutely extraordinary. What Lanham does is give you a surefire way to revise your writing and make it better. Take him with a little bit of a grain of salt, if not a boulder of salt. Lanham is all about getting sentences going quickly, for instance, all right? He wants them moving fast. He doesn't want any slow wind-ups. I don't know how important that is. He's also a real stickler on the passive voice. He doesn't think you should use it ever, and sometimes it actually matters. You should be able to use it. He is spot on in talking about how completely destructive euphemism is in language, that vapid, useless ways that we use words in a euphemistic way. Sometimes we need to do that. When my dad died a year ago, I couldn't bear to say, well, my father died. My dad, he's dead. I told my students in an email that my dad went supernova because I love the idea of him exploding like a star. In those ways, in moments like that, we definitely need euphemism. Elsewhere in our lives, euphemism can be completely destructive. When you're getting fired, you should probably be told, I'm firing you, you're losing your job. It doesn't really help, does it, to be told, well, we're downsizing, we're reorganizing, we're readjusting. Either way, you're fired and you're out without a paycheck. He kind of overdoes a metaphor here too, and I'm almost done talking about this. He calls his method of revising prose the paramedic method, right? Please be assured that I don't see myself as a kind of paramedic, a doctor, and your papers and journal entries as patients that need to be healed. But the bulk of this is important. It's really going to help your writing. It's going to have a transformative effect on your writing as far as I'm concerned. And I hope you watch these 3 videos very carefully. I'll end this little video by telling you the truth. I have a student, Tammy Oside, who went off to become an editor for the St. Paul Pioneer Press Dispatch. She told me later that on a daily basis, this film haunted her as she edited the writing of the cub reporters of the St. Paul Pioneer Press Dispatch. In fact, it haunted her so thoroughly that she left the newspaper business. She's in veterinarian school right now. I told her to hurry up. My dog's getting old. So, that's Richard Lanham. The links will be up. He's important. And maybe, who knows, maybe you'll all go off and buy Farfisas. Play them in your car while you go down the road. See you in the next vid.